Om Sahana Bhavato Sahano Bhunakto Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Okay. Last time we were attempting to look at two main things. One is consciousness, and the second was time. Variety of authors that I look at, or people who talk about this subject, really misuse the word consciousness. In our normal language, we use that word also. So let's help ourselves by being clear about two different things. Individual consciousness that we all talk about, and the big overriding overall consciousness. From that big consciousness, all consciousness is derived. So when you want to talk about individual consciousness, use the word I or me. But if you want to talk about the big overriding consciousness, use a very useful term used by Sri Raman Maharshi. He would say I. Okay? So that when we talk to each other, we don't get confused in these terms. The very first sutra, very simply translated, says, now this is an exposition of yoga. This is an explanation of yoga. There is an assumption made that people know what yoga means. Essentially, it means union. Union of the individual self with the divine self. Some simple explanations like that are used.
Consciousness. So what is the union?
That's a very good question. So often this term is used, union. Even I salute you or namaste is done same way. It's really very sort of childish understanding. I don't mean to be insulting to anybody, but you don't want to use the language, so you already create a division. Okay? The question often used is, who am I? Okay. And there is an advantage English language has, which Sanskrit does not have. Because in the English, you can say, who am I? Or who is I? If you ask me, who am I can say, I'm Ramanand, a label given to this body, mind, sense complex. Who is I? If somebody says, Ramanand, who is you? Okay? I would say, I'm a yoga teacher. Okay? Two different things. Better than who am I is the question, what am I? Better than what am I is, what is I? I use the word I all the time. Yeah. And at different situations, in different positions, by that word I mean different things. And last time I was comparing, I think, with electricity to understand that. Electrical energy, when it is expressed through a bulb, it sheds light. When it is expressed through a fan, it blows air. Two are very different expressions of the same energy, electricity. If the bulb had a mind, like our mind, or if the fan had a mind, and they talk about it, what would the bulb say? Electricity is this light. The fan would say electricity is this mechanical motion. We have done the same thing to the word consciousness. Consciousness is an energy, for want of a better word. When it is expressed through different things, we call it I in different ways. A flower opens up, essentially through energy of the sun and water. But even that happens because of consciousness. Flower expresses consciousness in a particular way because it is a flower. A bird would express consciousness in a very different way than a flower does because it is a bird. A dog or other animal would express it differently. This animal expresses consciousness in still a different way because of what this mechanism is. Consciousness is not different. In fact, there's only one consciousness, just like there's only one electricity. But expressed through different instruments, it expresses different things. Okay? So we express consciousness as human beings in a very different way than other animals might do, other living organisms might do. Yeah? Doesn't change consciousness. And there's another very big difference between the example I'm giving of electricity and consciousness. Electricity gets used up. It has a limited energy. Consciousness does not. Consciousness is infinite, not limited by time or space. So think about it. Infinite means if you add one to infinite, it remains infinite. If you take one out of infinite, it remains infinite. Okay? That is mathematical correct definition of what infinite means. There is no such thing as your infinite and my infinite.
Self-realization, like that would be closer than union.
Closer than union, yes. Still not complete, but closer than union. When somebody says, I know who I am, what are they talking about? They're talking about their label. I know I'm Ramanand. That is a very incomplete thing because I'm not Ramanand really. Ramanand is a label given to this organism. And if I say I am consciousness, what am I referring to? Like if a bulb says I am electricity, it is referring to something more than just light. Yes, but think of limitation even there. Universe is limited. Consciousness is not limited. There is no limitation to consciousness at all because it is free of time and space. For time, for example, you might have heard it is said something like, any pain you have will be swallowed by time. Time swallows everything. An event happens that you don't like, immediately there is a pain associated with that image, with that event. But as time passes, that slowly gets forgotten. That means time swallows that particular event, swallows conscious memory of that event. Consciousness swallows time. Space and time, which are properties of this expression of universe, are both swallowed up by consciousness. They cannot be separated from consciousness. But without consciousness, there is no time and there is no space. That is how big consciousness is. Are you conscious of what I'm talking? Consciousness allows you to recognize by what? By the mind being able to interpret what I'm saying. The functioning is of the mind, not of the consciousness. So in this paper that I asked you to look at, if you look at the very first one, look at the translations made. First one, with prayers for divine blessings, now begins an exposition of the sacred art of yoga. It's a poetical description. Next one, he says, now begins the exposition of yoga. This is the beginning of instruction in yoga. Now the expression of yoga is being made. Now begins the exposition on yoga. Now let us explain yoga. Now the discipline of yoga is explained. With humility, an open mind and heart, we embrace the sacred study of yoga. Really comical. Famous books, none of them really dwell on what now means. The very word now in Sanskrit is ATHA, is indicative of a lot more. If you take someone like Swami Dayananda and say, Swamiji, can you explain what this now refers to? He will spend an entire week or longer talking about what now indicates. Very briefly, at least now refers to something that's important to know. Patanjali, who compiled this, put it together. When he says now, we assume he is conscious of two other things that he was a grand master of. What were they? Ayurveda, yes. Huh?
Ayurveda and Sanskrit.
And Sanskrit language, grammar. Master of those two. Having mastered the grammar of Sanskrit, and having a mastery over Ayurveda. Okay? What is Ayurveda? It's a science of longevity of life. Ayur means long. Having mastered those two things means what? If you have mastery on Ayurveda, you are physically healthy, mentally also healthy. So that person, when they sit, they will sit erect. Okay? You can't sit like this and say, I know Ayurveda. That would mean you have some interpretation of what Ayurveda means. You don't really know it. Okay? If you know Ayurveda, you never sit like that. You will sit erect. Okay? Otherwise, you tend to fall asleep or not be able to pay proper attention. So, Ayurveda, at the very minimum, means if you have mastery over that, you will know how to sit properly. If you sit properly, it allows your breath also to flow properly. It stops you from falling asleep. You remain attentive. Okay? What was the second thing? Grammar. Okay? You would understand the Sanskrit language properly. You would not misinterpret it. Which sort of brings me to, when we study Yoga Sutra, first of all, do we know what Sutra is? Definition of Sutra. Variety of meanings are given. Like you take a thread and put beads through it. Each bead is like a sutra, is a garland. Okay, that kind of explanation is given. But actually, sutra means, and I'm going to use some Sanskrit word, I will translate them. It is alpaksharam. Alpa means small, concise. Aksharam is different syllables. Alpaksharams means it's very, very, very concise. To explain that would require, as I said, if you told somebody like Swami Dayananda, each word is going to take long, long, long time to explain. So it's extremely concise. Asandiddham, without vagueness, doubtless. Okay? Saravat, it has harmony of syntax without redundancy. Vishwato mukham. That's a very interesting word, because if you look with your face in different directions, you will see different things. So on the one hand, there is an ability to have variety of meanings, if you will. And yet, in that variety, there is no contradiction. Okay? If I look at you and I see Karen, I look there and see Andrea, and so on. I'll see different people. While there is a difference of what is seen, there is no contradiction. Okay? Because when you look at things from different angles, you will see different things. But within that, there is no contradiction. It is just different.
These are translations, but they're really interpretation.
Yes. And not very good interpretations. Okay. Akshobhyam. Shobha means what? beauty. Akshobhyam, without beauty. Not really without beauty. What he's saying is, there is no unnecessary adjective. So if you want to say, Andrea is honest, that's enough. To say Andrea is very honest, very becomes redundant. Honest means honest. There's no such thing as very honest. Yeah? So all unnecessary adjectives are not used in a sutra. Anavaidyam means the grammar is logical. Okay. Now, in different languages, same kind of words are used in a way that in light of another language, those would be confusing. Let me give you an example. I go to Germany and I make chai. When a German says in English that Ramanan made chai, you know what they say? Chai made Ramanan. Chai never makes Ramanan. But their language, the way their language logic is used, this is the way they talk. They don't get confused about it. They understand the same thing. Yeah? But in English, you say, Ramanan made chai. In German, you would say, chai made Ramanan. Means chai was made by Ramanan. Yeah? Same intention, but different way of using. In Sanskrit language, and particularly in Sutra, that kind of logic is very, very, very consistent. There is no difference. In the last part of the definition, is just sutram sutra viduhu. Means other sutras that are written by other authorities, you don't contradict them. So the people who are considered authorities on sutra do not disagree with what you are saying. There is that kind of authority given to a sutra. No contradictions, very concise, completely whole, can have many different meanings given to it as you expand on the meaning. But really, there is no contradiction within that. That kind of writing is done of a sutra or by a sutra. Now, assuming that is clear, it's not here in this thing that I gave you, that handout I gave you, but somebody translated the first sutra. It is ATHA Yoga Anushasanam, and the person says, now begins the story of yoga. Not a bad translation, but poor, very poor translation. Because what is a story? If you go and somebody tells you a story, or if you go to a play, to watch a play, you go to a movie to see the movie, what happens in it? There is a wide plot of whatever the story is. Somebody starts telling you the story, slowly the plot becomes more and more clear and it comes to a conclusion. Conclusion is at the end of the story. If somebody is telling you a story and they give you the conclusion first, you can say, okay, I now know the end. Yeah, that's correct. But somebody comes and says, Ramanan, you should go see a movie. It's a really nice movie. Let me tell you what happens in the movie. If you want to destroy the joy of watching a movie, tell the person what happens at the end of the movie. Can't do that, right? It would not be proper. Sutra is exactly the opposite. The conclusion is given first. If that is not appreciated or understood, then the next sutra is given. So when you say Atha Yoga Anushasanam, the very first sutra, which says, here is what the explanation of sutra is going to, yoga sutra is going to follow. Say, okay, stop, I know it. I don't need the second sutra. But it is because people don't know it. Therefore comes the next sutra. And when people don't appreciate even that, then it is expanded. You know? So what is expanded in sutra, at least in the first 10, 11 sutras, is what is the problem of life? How does the problem arise? What causes a problem in the mind? Now, there are two kinds of problems or challenges. If I want to go from here to home, I need thought. Thought is absolutely necessary so I can function logically. Otherwise, I would get lost. So, with regard to outer organization, to function in life, thought is absolutely necessary. But inwardly, thought creates a lot of problems. There is a very famous, I think, German philosopher, Descartes, who says, I think, therefore I am. Okay? Swami Dayananda says, I had a coffee with this man, he's making a joke. And they're sitting in a restaurant in France. They have some coffee. Then the waiter comes and says, would you like more coffee? And this fellow says, I don't think so. And so poof, he disappeared. Very big confusion, yes. Take that first sutra, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha, second sutra. When fluctuations of the mind stop, then there is yoga. With regard to outer functioning of life, if fluctuations of mind stop, as I said, it'll be a problem. So he's not referring, saying yoga chitti vritti nirodha, is not referring to outer things. He's referring to how the mind modifies various things. Take one of the biggest things, love. I will say several different things and see what happens in it. You love an object like a pencil. You love situation. You love a friend. You love a child. You love a dog. You love a bird. You love a joke. In all these different sentences I used, what is common? What are the words that are repeated? You love. Right? You love is repeated with reference to a variety of things. In each case, you mean something slightly different. But what does love do to you? When I say, I love so-and-so, or if I say, I love an object, what is the difference? Difference definitely is with reference to what the object or situation that I'm talking about. But when in each of these situations I repeat, I love, I'm talking about what happens to me. When I come across a situation or near a person or a dog that I love, something happens to me. When I say I love, that what happens to me is what I'm talking about. Stop. Talk a little louder. I'm wearing my hearing aids, but I still have difficulty.
I was feeling the sensation in my body. How do I react to the pencil or whatnot? And they started changing. Is that the feeling you're talking about, like the body feeling?
To start with, yes, but little more than that. What happens to your mind? Please, I'm not questioning you, okay? This is not a quiz. I'm just trying to create a proper conversation. So when you say you love, and you are correct, that I'm talking of a feeling that is invoked in me. Of it, expansion from what? In your breath. Okay. Anything else?
Brings you joy.
It's the joy, okay. Anyone else? Anything?
But are we again at the disunion of I and the object of affection, whether it's the object of the love, whether it is a person or a pencil?
Okay.
So
So if I say I love a dog, I'm talking of some kind of a union between me.
Because you would one or of the same consciousness.
No, there is one consciousness only. See, it's something that we started with. We can't destroy that.
I'm trying to destroy it. I'm trying to understand how this, because this is sort of a critical point to my way of thinking. So we have the consciousness that is expressed in a different way through every vehicle. But if I love something, I am saying that I and the something that I love are not the same thing.
Not the same, right? Which is a primary problem. If I say to Andrea, I love you, okay, it begins by creating a division, which means I am separate from you. Rather than saying that I am you, I'm already beginning by saying we are separate. You see the problem?
So could you just say, I?
I what?
I. And look-
No. Let's look at the two things I talked about. For transactional purpose, living on this planet in this form, you have to keep separate. I and you are separate. I love you. So for ordinary use of the language, it's not a problem. But within that, what happens to me, I create a sense of separateness. That's a problem.
There's one translation of the fourth sutra that I like. It said, at other times, not in the state of yoga, one remains identified with the thought waves in the mind. And so that would be maybe also more identified with the container than.
Correct and not correct. Take any container. It has a boundary. What happens outside that boundary?
One has no control over what happens outside the boundary.
What I'm trying to get at is, if there is no boundary, like consciousness that we talked about has no boundary. Okay? So you can't, even in language, you can't ask something like, what is outside that boundary? Yeah, correct. It's a different level of reality. We are talking of the highest level of reality, which is consciousness. It has no boundary. Within that, with that understanding, what is love? Anytime I express love and talk of I love this or I love that or I love a situation, what am I saying in it? There is a boundary. So try and say to somebody, I love you, but there is a boundary. It destroys love. When the sense of boundary is lost, then there is love. I love you, but. See, in human interactions, just think of this. Without destroying your love for any individual, think of this. When I say to, let's take Andrea, I say to Andrea, I love you. What am I saying about my feeling? This is very, very, very important. Okay? When I say to her, I love you, what am I saying? Not about her, but about what I feel.
Somewhat like a reflection, yeah, a reflector. So she's reflecting you, which you're basically saying, I love myself, or you're having the experience of love. Yeah.
Anybody else sense something more? No, that we dealt with sorrow. Okay.
When I'm with you, I do not feel a boundary.
You do not feel what? Yeah, that's correct, but I want something more about how you actually feel. Let me ask the question like this. When I see Andrea, this is an example. When I see Andrea and I say, I love you, from whatever I see, I'm feeling pleased. I'm talking about that pleasure. Pleasure may not be an excellent word, but you understand what I'm saying. I am pleased. From that center of being pleased, I'm saying, I love you. When I'm pleased, what happens to me? Joy, yes. Joy is just another word for pleased. I'm completely acceptable to myself.
Or that's to say that the mind stops judging.
That follows. Okay? What I'm saying is, whenever I say I love anything, any person, any situation, what I'm saying is this situation, this person, this object is pleasing to me. That pleased self is acceptable to me. So all Andrea has to do is to say, Ramanan, today I'm not going to give you anything to eat. And what happens? Let's go to a restaurant. See, when I say, this is the seriousest part, when I say I love something or somebody or some situation, what I'm saying is that that situation, that person, that thing creates a sensation in me where I find myself to be completely acceptable. It's not about the other person. It's entirely about me. I find myself acceptable. As soon as whatever situation is there changes, where I don't like it, and hence I'm not that self is not acceptable to me, then there's no love. So love is a sensation which is an expression of I find myself acceptable to me. So let's pick on Larry. Do you love Mary? Of course you love Mary. She's a very beautiful daughter. When she grows up, you might have a little challenge with her. If she's intelligent, you're bound to have that. So take a situation. She grows up and she does something that you don't like. A simple example, she starts smoking. She does it because she wants it. She likes it. But you witness that and you don't like it. Now, in that situation, what happens to your love? Do you still love her?
Yeah.
No, my friend, you still love her. No, I'm asking you, do you love her when you find her smoking? Okay, you said yes. So when you say you don't like her smoking, what is it that you don't like or you don't love?
So talking about, for example, we're talking about my daughter. So smoking. Love my daughter. If she makes a decision out of raga, a desire to smoke, that's something. That's an experience. I know what smoking does. I know possibilities of what that leads to, etc. But my love doesn't change. As a matter of fact, for my love for her, I'll probably explain a little bit more about what the so maybe some history and background of how this smoking thing came to be, the history of tobacco, which was actually a rather positive ritual with tobacco in regards to the Indians. Yeah, but it's turned into a sort of toxicity in regards to what it is now, a big corporate sort of thing. People can say. Anyway, so perhaps.
Okay. So by explaining to her something, teaching her about what smoking does, you are trying to do what?
Some guidance so that it can perhaps avoid some future affliction.
Why?
Because that's suffering. I don't want to see her suffer unnecessarily.
Why?
It turns out to me, again, it's my feelings.
That's right.
Viewing her, there's some
That is very correct. If I find somebody doing something that I don't like, I'm certainly outwardly helping them, explaining to them, don't do this, it's not nice for you. But the reason I'm doing it is because I don't like myself witnessing that. Okay? Understand how important this is. It is never about the other person. I become not acceptable to myself. That is my real objection. Can anybody think of a situation where you are trying to change somebody and it is totally for that somebody, not for you? Imagine. Okay.
Physically abusive relationship.
She's okay. I'm just repeating so the recording works. She's in an abusive relationship. Okay.
With a private counselor, and so I know it would be deadly. So I would imagine it's possible for me to care about my friend and see if he stays in this relationship.
But you just said it's about you, your feeling. I'm saying find a situation.
But can't there be both? But I have a feeling about it, but it's really, I want her to
Be
not be harmed.
very, very, very careful. If you don't care at all, would you do anything?
If I don't care at all.
Yeah.
You
You stop the friend from being in a bad relationship because you care. Okay? This is what I'm emphasizing. It's about how you feel. If you don't care at all, you would not interfere. You will say, your life, find out.
Are you saying that there is no altruism?
There is no.
Altruism?
Give me a real example.
Disturbing.
That altruism is also, if you look at it, it's to make me feel pleased with myself.
Somewhere I read a quote that true compassion was allowing other people to suffer in the way they choose. Is that something closer to what you getting?
Okay, that's that. Okay, let's accept that slightly different story, but let's go with that. What happens to you when you allow that? My friend is smoking. I decide that, it's up to you. If you like to do that, that's okay. What happens to me?
I separate myself from the situation and the person.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking of what happens to me. Like we said, I love somebody and I try and do something because it pleases me and I like that. I am acceptable to myself. Yes? When I say, okay, I won't do anything, let them find out what they want, in that situation, is it any different? I still do it because that is acceptable to myself.
Because you've made the decision that that is acceptable for you to do that.
Either way, whether I try to change them or I don't change them, either way, I am doing it because that situation makes me acceptable to myself. You cannot change that. Right or wrong, you are deciding. That correct, and you would add according to that. But I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly. The reason, even after you decide what is right or wrong, you do something that is acceptable to you. I love you is a trap. Okay? It means I will strangulate you. Now you do what I want. And the minute you don't do what I want, I object to that. Which means it is to do about my feeling about myself. The fact that it different situation, it leads you to different action is a separate story. The meat of the matter, even for a vegetarian, is I am acceptable to myself is the highest value I have.
May I say that this was what made me feel despair at the end of our last class. Despair and nothing means anything was kind of what I wound up feeling at the end of the last class. And this I believe this is the kernel of it. This is the nut of it.
It's interesting when you get that. Actually the other day. I heard a talk, and it was an old talk, it was somewhere in the 80s, but a question was asked. The question was, what is most important? And the speaker said, well, that's an interesting way to answer. If Gautam Buddha was answering the question, perhaps would answer no thing. Nothing is important. But if Shankara was answering the question, perhaps everything is important, including the dust on the ground. However, either way you go, you should have a tranquil mind.
Well, I think what Buddha Anderson meant was like the most important thing is to be present and live, but the nature of life is impermanence. But so much about being awake, like yoga.
Why? Why?
In order to be connected with being.
No, in order to yourself being acceptable to you, you cannot get away from it.
I think if we're mostly as we are in the world, in our minds, and in our thoughts and in our judgments, we're very removed from being. That's why people meditate and do yoga. And I think it just comes naturally from a place of beingness, a place of accept. You can't be in beingness without acceptance of what is.
My love, if it comes naturally, what is it based on? It's based on a value judgment I have already made. What makes me so right? You understand what I'm saying?
It's about being right or wrong. I don't think we cares.
Little louder, please.
What is
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
Well, I think presence, beingness, love, consciousness, it's all one God. It's the same vast.
What does ego mean to you?
That's a good question. I'm thinking of an external construct of the mind.
Let me say what ego means. My mind, when I am a little child, has made up an image about me which says, I am a little child and these parents are supposed to take care of me. I grow up a little and my same mind says, I am an ego and thank you parents, but I need independence. I grow up a little more. I go to a college. I am now at a university studying. What is the mind saying? I am a college student. In fact, I'm better than others. What I'm saying in general is, ego is an image that my mind makes up about who I am. Okay? Go back to the previous conversation. That you want to have compassion for somebody. That's why you would act. I'm saying that compassion is based on some value sense you already created in your mind. And what I asked was, what makes you so correct? Because I have a sense of value. Like today, if I say, I don't want to enslave anybody, I don't want to make somebody a slave. That's based on a value judgment. I'm not talking of whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying it is a value judgment I have made because it pleases me. Is there a value judgment I make where that kind of pleasure for me is not involved at all?
Gandhi's great history of social justice, that was something that pleased him to do it?
Absolutely. That's a very good example. Wonderful things as he did it because he was very clear that without this, I don't want to live. That's a value judgment. In fact, it's a very good example. I'll tell you as an Indian, there were people in India of Indian origin who believed Gandhi was wrong and the British were good for India. Why? Because whatever British did, they were benefiting from. You understand? That is how sick it was. In any colonial situation that happens, I lived in Africa. There are Africans who, some of them, not majority will not believe that, but some of them who had a good position because of British authority, they like the British to stay. If nothing else, they'll say, little longer. Including, I was in Tanganyika, which now is Tanzania. Julius Nyerere, really saintly human being. Okay? When the British decided that, all right, we will give you independence, we will leave. You know what he said? No, not so fast. Give me 2 more years. Okay? Now, that was not out of sickness because he believed that my people are not ready for this. There were very few, I think no more than a dozen university graduates who were Africans. How are you going to govern a country with that? Tribal laws would not work. They will work internally, but when you deal with outer world, it's impossible to govern a country. So he wanted the British to say, stay a little longer, let me find out a few more people who can help me govern this country. He loved the country immensely, obviously. Julius Nyerere, very, very good man. Now, let's come back to a little better conclusion. We are finishing this. Can you imagine any entity who would have love, like you are saying, naturally, wherein there is nothing he or she wants from it? God. God and God alone. Nothing else. Why? It is like this. I love some food Andrea makes. So I eat it a little bit. And she says, you like it? Have some more. And I say, yeah, I like it. I eat some more. There is a limit at which point you'll say, yes, I like the food, but no more, thank you. Which means when there is a totality of something, no more is wanted. God is that totality of love. So that there is nothing that's going to please the God by adding some pleasure to him. We all have that with regard to any relationship. And the ideal that's being pointed out in the very second sutra, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, is there is a total cessation of that kind of fluctuation in the mind. Okay? It is not about fluctuation in the consciousness. Even the first 2 parts, this is a translation. Yoga is the cessation of movement in the consciousness. The second one says, yoga is the restriction of the fluctuations of consciousness. Nothing happens to consciousness. You cannot violate that law. When you say something happens to consciousness, you are talking of what we refer to as individual consciousness, which is really a misnomer. It's individual mind. There is no such thing as individual consciousness. And if that is understood, you can close the book. You don't need the second sutra. But even after my explanation, if you say, yes, you understand that intellectually. Okay? The word understand is a very good word in English language. You know why? It says understand. Most of the time when we say, I understand, you are standing over it. Beautiful word. I don't think the English meant that because they never understood anything. Okay, before we close, any question? You understand what I'm saying? It's an immensely deep knowledge. Okay? And even when, like, I understand, I am aware of the fact that I understand intellectually. I don't quite understand it in the real sense of the word. So that, coming back to my situation with Andrea, I love Andrea, where there is no sense that there's nothing more that can be added to it. Which means I love her, where there is no question of I love her because it pleases me, and hence I'm acceptable to myself. Okay? That situation can only exist, and I'm talking theory, if I am God, or if I am enlightened. That is what enlightenment means. The entire purpose of Yoga Sutra of Patanjali is to show you that state of enlightenment. And from the very first couple of sutras here, if we today understand what that means, how profound, how deep it is, how complete it is, then you don't need the second sutra. But being human, we don't quite get it that deeply. That is why the next sutra was written. Okay? Now, this is not an insult to anybody. We are all human. We all have the same problem. Don't call it a problem, but same challenge. There are no problems in life, but there are lots of challenges. And the rest of the sutras have to deal with what those challenges are, how different they are, and all that. That exposition is necessary so that our mind can appreciate how wide variety of things there are. And he has done it very methodically. How many different types of kleshas there are, what to do about them, all that explanation follows. But as you go through that, don't forget the first two classes. But if this explanation of the first couple of sutras is lost, then you are on a, you are a dog chasing the tail kind of thing. So I gave this kind of what you call homework long time ago. And I said, okay, take any subject that you like and write sutras about that subject. Let's see if you can understand what sutra means from the way you write. Yeah? So I had a friend, he died, Neil Stansky, his name was, and he wrote chocolate sutras. And he had written beautiful sutras, following same lines of how first few sutras are written. He wrote Chocolate Sutra. I'll send you a copy of that. Yeah. You choose any other subject and write sutras. Let's see if you understand the sort of logic of how sutras are written. Okay? Don't struggle with it, enjoy it. Choose any subject you like and write sutra about that. You can look at what Neil Stansky has done and write. And I had a wonderful older lady, very, very wise lady. She came to the class that was in San Jose, and she said, Ramanand, I have a title for Neil Stansky's Chocolate Sutra. So I said, okay, let's hear. What is the title? You know what she said? Gadaiva. So there is joy in it, there is enthusiasm in it, there is learning in it. Okay? Thank you. Namaste.